All right, we are recording for Chapter 8 of Star Trek: The Motion Picture Novelization. Um, number of things going on here. One that is, again, it's towards the end, but it's like, I'm not sure how much Roddenberry understands scale. I mean, it's like, I'm probably never going to not have that criticism. Okay. Of science fiction, they never get scale right. But this is, yeah, still think that's not really true. So it starts with a couple things. Oh, and again, it's either Roddenberry's weird or this was just 70s still. We'll get to that, though. So Kirk is doubting himself now, because he's wondering if he hadn't missed where the button was on the transporter for the one booster, if he had found it at that half second sooner by just knowing where it was, would that have saved Lori? He's not thinking so much about Sonak, he's thinking about her, which is fair. But, yeah, so he has those doubts there. He also starts wondering, why was she there? Was she volunteering? Did she think that her expertise in xenopsychology, that would help? He'll never know now. Well, I mean, presumably she would have told somebody, so he would be able to find out. But let's set that aside. But it's also the whole, why was she there? Had she come hoping for what? His forgiveness? He hoped that hadn't been it, since she had done him no injury. That first year back on Earth, he had needed exactly what she had been to him. She had realized that too, and it had pleased her immensely to both heal and pleasure him so. The fact that the old Fox Nagoya had used her took none of that away. On the one hand, I appreciate that end part there. That's like, he still has a value for what she gave him. It doesn't matter what that she was ordered to do so, essentially. That she was assigned to him by that guy. However, it still is, I would still consider that degrading. That she was assigned to him, and it was kind of clinical. Even if there was an actual relationship there, not necessarily romantic, just, I'm using relationship in the broad term, so friendship would also count. Because it's like, after a year, it ended. So it was in fact clinical. I'm sorry, to me, that's like, okay, yeah, that's degrading to both of them. So, yeah, you got what you needed, but it's also, it was done in a degrading way. I don't see how that's at all healthy in any way. And it's also like, why couldn't there have been other means of this? I mean, it could have even just been, hey, you get a year off. Go do whatever. I mean, aside from the fact that the timeline wouldn't match up, he's like, go meet Dr. Marcus and make a second Dr. Marcus, who comes up with in Wrath of Khan. But technically, when you think about it, the age of David would mean that had to have been from before Kirk was on the Enterprise. I mean, this is one of those things, because knowing the movies, I see Wrath of Khan being sufficiently after Enterprise, Star Trek, that's like, maybe, like, it was like exactly how it fits in, but this is like, no, it's been 8 years since the start of the 5-year mission, and David would be older than that. So, anyway, but yeah, it just, it like, going back to Rollerball, she was assigned to him, and there's that aspect of that is depicted in Rollerball, which I do recommend that movie. I think it is based on a book. I'm not sure how interested I am in finding and reading. I got other things that are high priority stories to me. That let me be clear. I think I should explain that a little bit more. That because I'm sure, like, I could believe that some people, if they would ever look at the Star Wars novelization reviews, not exactly reviews, but those videos, or even as I go through these Star Trek novelizations, people are like, oh, you gotta read the expanded universe, you gotta read this stuff, as I said. That's fine to recommend it. I have no issue with that. Even with Revenge of the Sith, that really has me turned off from Star Wars as a whole. So, sorry. Well, the Star Wars written work, to speak clear. Disney turned me off of the movies. and other associated content. That's Disney. But I do have other stories I want to read first. Like, you know, so those are higher priorities. If anyone looks at those, it's like, hey, I recommend this. Hey, I recommend this. I welcome that. Thank you. And I mean that. Thank you. I might not get to it for a very long time because I have those other things I want to read first. So anyway, yeah, okay. I just am trying to check, and I think I was saying something, then it skipped, and then it left my mind. With that aside, but still, I mean, it's. Does that kind of apply? Yeah, I guess in a way it does. Yeah. So I have my rules for content, which, of course, everyone's free to disagree with it, which is basically for various things. Violence, sex, drugs, cursing. There might be some others. Well, by and large, I just feel anything is appropriate to be in a story. Anything at all. But it needs to be contextually appropriate. It needs to be contextually necessary. And that might be part of what I'm running into an issue here with, is that Kirk's healing, it didn't need to be solved that way. It could have been solved another way. It could also have been, yes, he did have a romantic relationship, but with somebody else. As I said, could have just been he got a year off. Didn't need to be somebody assigned to him. Okay? If I were to do that, then there would be more to it. Like, that because of that relationship, that there is actually something still there, and Laurie fought for him with Nagoya, or something like that. That relationship continues to have meaning. Here, no, she's just literally killed off, and it's like we don't really know anything about the time there. It was just, oh yeah, this happened for a year, as though this is just normal, and it's like, unless it is, to my sensibilities, that was degrading, as I've already stated in this video. So, for me to include that, it's like, yeah, but I would only include that in a story in this exact way if I wanted to show these characters as degraded in that way. And I wouldn't want to do that. Not to Kirk, and not to her. I've got no reason to do that to her. I mean, the one thing maybe you can give to Kirk is that he didn't know it was an assignment. But it's also, even earlier on this, it was described as, and technically he seems to be more or less the narrator. Sometimes sometimes it's clear here, sometimes it seems more it's just somebody talking. It is just a omniscient narrator. But he was aware it was a year long. Like, so even if he wasn't aware, she specifically was assigned to him, it still was this. He still would have been aware this was an assignment. It was going to end at that point on the calendar. So the degradation is still there. So it's, yeah. Anyway, now we got another thing that, again, it's like, I mean, I don't even care if you want to call me a prude for this. I'm sorry, but this is just weird. So he had given the order before for everyone to assemble on the recreation deck, which it's described as being so big. Actually, I should cover that first. That it is very large, and that's the largest on a starship. It's the largest interior ever designed into a starship, a single interior ever designed into a starship. And I'm just thinking, okay, what do you define as a starship? Because there should be cargo holds that are absolutely massive. Like, a ship that's all it is. So, yeah. But it is also what counts as a starship. Because that is actually something that, even watching through in the original series, a starship is like a specific designation. Like, the Constitution class is a starship, and I think it says in the series that there's only 12 of them. But the Federation has plenty of other ships, obviously small shuttles, but also like cargo ships that move around. That seem to be based on the model of the Botany Bay from Space Seed, but it's like those apparently are not starships. So I'm not sure what the designation is. But there's also the aspect of a starship is what the Klingons are intimidated by as well. So it's, yeah. but it still is like, to me, a cargo. It would make sense to have massive cargo ships. Anyway, so this wreck deck interior was 3, perhaps 4 times the size of Enterprise's former recreation area before the redesign. By the way, this is just a style thing. It has at this point shifted to saying just Enterprise, not the Enterprise, and I find that odd. Because like how it's treating the Enterprise as a character in that way by dropping the, but at the same time, it's like it's not. It is a ship, and I don't. You can love the Enterprise, but it's still a ship. Yeah. So I might end up having well, actually, because that's the only time it was in this quote. But if in other spots where it seems like I get tangled, I get tongue-tied when I reach it, it might be because I'm trying to insert the word the, and that's throwing me off. Anyway. And this without including the exercise rooms and new sports areas adjoining it. So massive recreation facility. There were many, none of them Deep Space veterans, who thought this new design was wasteful preoccupation with games and sociability. But those whose space experience was numbered in years knew that the function served here was as necessary to a starship as its engines. They left it there. I absolutely agree. This makes perfect sense. That you humans, we do need our recreation in one form or another. It is some sort of emotional release, some way of just escaping, and that could be books, it could be movies, could be television, could be video games, could be music, could be anything. Could also be exercise as well. I mean, there's a wealth of options. But it continues. Here, the most vital of the ship's mechanisms were kept in peak operating efficiency. Good with this. Through music, yeah. Song, yeah. Games, yeah. Debate, yeah. Exercise, yeah. Competition, sure. Friendship, okay. Romance. That's not exactly something you want on a ship because it can lead to entanglements that are going to be contrary, that may run contrary to your duty, and it can cause problems there. But I mean, it happens. You're out there for a long time. Technically, I understand the argument that all deep space ships are to some degree or another potentially going to be generational ships. I mean, it's not that the next generation is going to command the ship, but there might be a next generation there. But it's like, yeah, romance, and then, yeah. So, song, games, debate, exercise, competition, friendship, romance, sex. This is the largest room on the ship that everyone comes to. And it's talking about, oh yeah, you can use it for sex. You have quarters if you gotta do it. Why would you do it here? Why is it on the list? Strike that off the list. Leave it at romance. Because technically that also implies it as well. Oh, but it leaves the reader to be like, yeah, that's where you go on your dates. And then you go back to your quarters. I mean, maybe this is 70s, okay? Maybe that's 70s and not Roddenberry. I don't know. Either way, though, you don't need to write it here. I mean, literally, you could drop off sex and the list isn't harmed by that. What the? Where is it? Oh no, that's interesting. It actually erased the highlight. It went to sleep on me while it was selected. I'll bet it's because it was selected. Yeah, the list was as endless as human ingenuity itself. That's fine. But it's like the idea of the companionship, that's fine. That's fine. But it is also, again, as I said, emotional entanglements would be something that you do actively discourage. I mean, sure, it may end up happening. Yeah. But it's, you don't want, it doesn't even have to be officers. 2 crew members having a lovers quarrel, and then battle stations are called, and you can't now, and you are not able to rely on them now. There's also the issue of power dynamics as well. I'm saying that can be another reason for it to be discouraged, is just, what if the other person is a superior? I mean, like, that is also one reason why office romances can be discouraged at various companies, is because if there was a power dynamic there, it may lead to unnecessary complications. I think is the nicest way to put, because I don't want to say that just because the power dynamic exists that means that there is going to be a problem. I don't want to say that, because that doesn't have to be the case at all. But it is still, it's possible for it to be implied or inferred either way, and neither way is that going to be good. And in a starship situation where it's like, hey, battle stations, yeah, no, there's this gets, there can be problems there. Just trying to think if there's anything I should acknowledge. In the Balance of Terror, it does start with two of the crew members getting married. Or was the marriage, I think the marriage actually was interrupted, that they didn't completely, the ceremony hadn't completed, and then by the end one of them dies. Sorry for that spoiler, but it's a good episode even without that. Even with knowing that, it's a very good episode. So it's like, that does appear the relationship was healthy, it was working out, that's fine, all. But it's still, there can be complications. So the idea that, oh yeah, we got a spot for it. Oh, I do feel like I should mention this. The idea of the recreation area, I am perfectly good with. In fact, I put in there for other reasons not really mentioned here. But if you read A Letter from Catherine, I do describe on the space station there where the story starts, that it does have, in fact, all these space stations do have an atrium area that is, like, the one here is described as though a section of Earth were just picked up and the space station built around it. That seems that natural. And there are other space stations, they have other designs like this, somewhere every biome on Earth can be found in there, which is very weird and makes it very clearly artificial. But still, it's like, that is very important. I wrote that more so, not just because I think it would exist, but the idea that, no, humans, we do need nature. We do need to be able to be in at least what appears to be nature and not just surrounded by walls of, today, wood, concrete, certainly in the space station, also metal. Oh, I do also have one thing in there. Roman, main character in that, talks about how he was once on a space station where they actually did make it look like the interior walls were wood, and he hated that because, like, yeah, I know that, the backing behind it is, like metal or something, but still, I really don't like the idea of a permeable surface like wood being what appears to be the only thing separating me from space. It's like, yeah, but still, I mean, it's such a I didn't think of it necessarily. I didn't think of it first in terms of recreation. That was not the primary purpose. It is, as I said, I put that atrium in there and described it that way because humans are part of nature, and so to be removed from a planet, you need something to make up for that. And it also has basically an artificial sun, the light array up above that is meant to recreate that. Anyway, so he shows them the video that he's already seen, now twice. Well, twice prior to this. Once from the Senceiver, and then again when he was at the Gibraltar communication area. But it also mentions here. So they've now all seen it. Has here a line, he could also sense that he had been right to change uniforms and wear captain's stripes once again. Actually, I need to think about what that means. But getting to why I like this line, because it does make sense. The idea that he is now showing, I'm in charge, I'm the captain. Because you may love Decker, it still is. This is the dude that is like the greatest captain of all time. And he is in charge. That's still going to be comforting, okay? And it's not like Decker's gone. Decker's there. But this is the living legend right there, and he has those captain stripes on. That means he's leading us, okay? So we're getting the best of both of them, right? I mean, it's like this is good. The thing that I have to think about is what is meant by putting captain stripes on. Um, because what I'm hoping is this, that he is still in an admiral's uniform, because that is his rank. He should not be in the rank of a it's appearing to have the rank of captain, but it does make sense to me that it is no, there are stripes that you put on to indicate you are the captain of a vessel. So it's like, even if you were a commander, you would wear those if you were the captain, kind of thing. And also, I'm trying to remember, it's been a while. Like, when I was looking at this, would have been quite a while ago, actually. Last time I watched through Magnum PI, just good show. Um, it like in trivia, it mentioned the scrambled eggs on the brim of the hats for some of the Navy officers. It does explain, like, I think I'd seen in the trivia it mentioning that the scrambled eggs, which is just like a pattern that's on there, that indicates that this is actually command person. So they could command a vessel, or well, of some level, some degree. So I'm thinking or hoping maybe it's something like that, where he now does have something adorning himself, not changing his rank, but just adorning himself, saying, "I am the captain." All right, what are these last few things, and what would I? Is it just that? Okay. So it ends. Oh yeah. Let me read this. So then it cuts to Epsilon 9, because the cloud is now close enough for it to actually be visualized, even by the naked eye. And this, by the way, at least part of it is in the movie. But what had been a strange luminescence in longer views of it could now be seen to be made up of bizarre patterns of glowing colors in great geometrical displays and combinations. This I find interesting, in a way that it is very appropriate, because V'ger, as we ultimately know, is a machine. So the use of geometry actually makes sense, and it appearing there is like there is an order here, there is a logic, which we do already know the logic because of Spock's interaction with it already. So this is actually very appropriate, and it's something I don't recall ever noticing in the movie. Maybe it's there, maybe it isn't. Don't know. But then we get Enterprise. What we're seeing there is definitely a power field of some kind. Measures over 82 AUs in diameter. Must be something incredible inside that generating it. No shit. Okay? I checked. So, well, first, it was 1 billion kilometers wide. That's about 6.68 AU, as I recall. So 82 AUs means this thing is now 10 times, more than 10 times the size it was when the Klingons encountered. At least we are assuming that the 1 billion kilometers thing was accurate to what was depicted then, and that it's growing. It could have also just been, the image was bad and we thought it was smaller than it is. In any case, 82 AUs. What does that compare to? Well, the distance, the orbital radius for Pluto is 39.48 AU. Sun, Pluto, about 40. Which means Pluto to Pluto, 80. Okay, so 80. V'ger. The V'ger is larger than the, and this is, let's assume that it is roughly spherical. That means that V'ger is larger than all of the planetary space the solar system occupies. Now, there is more to the solar system, okay? The heliopause is a bit further out, and apparently the Oort cloud is beyond that. Okay? So it's not that big yet. I've seen something saying that the solar system is approximately a light year across. That is still a hell of a lot bigger than this, but still is. You can fit every planet in its current orbit within V'ger. That's I'm really hoping he just had no sense of scale when he wrote this. Because, as I recall, there's the description, in the movie at least, of V'ger entering the solar system. Because it's like when V'ger is destroyed, you see the Enterprise left there, and it's in orbit over Earth. It's like, and the Enterprise was near the center. It's like, dude, this thing is as bigger than the solar system. It can't get near Earth without engulfing it, unless the power field itself collapses. And maybe it'll say that later on. I don't know, but it's still like, son of a bitch, this thing is huge. To help put that in even larger context, even greater context. I hate Dyson spheres, okay? I think they're stupid. At least as far as a solid object is. There's other designs like a Dyson swarm, that I'm okay with. That's fine. But still is. Even the Dyson sphere, I'm not sure actually what the Dyson sphere in Relics is described as. I'm not sure. As far as its size. But what some people try to describe is that the Dyson sphere would go out to about the habitable zone, which is about 1 AU, at least if it's a sun-like star at the center, because we're in the habitable zone. So that would mean V'ger dwarfs a Dyson sphere. At least a Dyson sphere around a sun-like star. I don't necessarily agree, by the way, that you would want a Dyson sphere that close, because if you're collecting all the energy, it's not going anywhere within the shell. You don't need it that close. I figured that you could make the thing really big. You could make it this big. Because as I said, all the energy is being captured, so having be further out shouldn't be a problem. You might need to do some heat generation because of inverse square, or at least to put it in places you need to be, but I don't think you need to be necessarily latched to the habitable zone. But regardless, this is stupid big. Alright, which I'm either using it as just a, yeah, it is absolutely massive, or science fiction doesn't get scale right. And it's that kind of stupid. I don't know. The fact that he is using the term AU, well, and it even does have Kirk in his thoughts being like 82 times the distance between the sun and the Earth, the average orbital radius of the Earth. So Roddenberry has a knowledge of what an AU is. Maybe he didn't look up to see how large it makes it, because saying that's past the orbit of Pluto, it's like that's also something you say there. But it is, if he knew, maybe he didn't know that, because I mean that's way too big. Okay, I mean it's way too big. I guess, is that a way to put it? I'm not sure. I'm just trying to think. Would that be... No, yes, I will say it. That would mean that V'ger is generating more power than the sun. And here's why I can say that. Because V'ger's power field here is visible. Okay, it's visible out that far. The sun isn't. Okay, it does have the solar wind that goes out, in fact, a little bit past that, because that's what the heliopause is. That's where the sun's solar wind runs into the intergalactic wind, intragalactic wind, essentially, and they balance out. That's why it's the heliopause. And that would still be further out, but it's like you can't see that, right? There aren't luminescent shapes in it. So there's a greater density to V'ger than what the sun produces. I'm saying even the corona you can't see unless you cover up the sun itself, right? So, and the corona is smaller than AU. So that's how massive, absolutely massive in scale for size, but also power V'ger would have to be. And that's insane. Okay, to help put that in context, I'm actually not sure if the core of the sun is approximately this big. It is about the size of the Earth. But the core, white dwarfs can be about the size of the Earth, and a white dwarf is the now cooling off core of a star that has since died, a star like the sun. So you're talking about fusion. Fusion is actually not necessarily that rapid. It's not like the whole thing is undergoing fusion at the same time, but it still is. You're talking about a mass that large, size of the Earth, undergoing fusion, is potentially producing less energy than V'ger. That's a lot. Yeah, it's been a while, and I'll try to stop after mentioning this. That we've actually, I remember back this would, oh god, so about 16, 17 years ago. So I might be remembering it wrong, but I do remember being mentioned in one of my physics classes in college that the actual rate of fusion in the sun is actually kind of low. Fusion is, so the point was kind of fusion is very powerful, is very, very powerful, but I think there's also the element of, well, it's like within a certain area, but when you have such a massive volume about the size of the Earth, it does add up. It is actually still a lot of power, but it's not as though the whole of the core is just undergoing fusion at the entire, all the time, which it really can't, because right now the sun's core, it's only set up for burning hydrogen, fusing hydrogen into helium. So once it's used, it's used. It'll eventually go to burning helium into heavier elements, but that'll be in billions of years, so we don't have to worry about that. Other things that'll have killed us by then, possibly, or hopefully humanity will have just left the planet and won't be as bad a concern anyway. But yeah, it's V'ger's freaking scary. It also is making me. I'm sorry. There are people that do headcanon stuff suggesting that V'ger encountered the Borg, and that the Borg repaired and did all this stuff in Santa Fe. The Borg, I don't think, were ever demonstrated as being at this level of power. I mean, if they were, I don't think. How could the Federation have stopped something like that? That's I mean, yeah, it's insane. It's insane. So more likely, we shouldn't think about headcanon. I mean, there was no concept of the Borg at the time this was written, but I think it's also just at times Star Trek is more fantasy, where it's just point out numbers that seem really, really impressive, and this is like. It's beyond that, and it is, I think, it's to the point that I don't think scale was being properly considered here, but that's me, and it is also, I have the benefit of hindsight on basically all of Star Trek, so, which Roddenberry, he only knew the stuff that's true. A lot of it he had come up with, but he doesn't know about Next Generation, he doesn't know about Deep Space Nine, doesn't know even about Wrath of Khan, he doesn't know about those things that are still to come, so, yeah, but it's still, that scale matters if you're going to write a story. Even outside of science fiction, scale still matters, right? I mean, it's if you want to write a fantasy story that has a castle on top of a mountain, you need to think about how tall the mountain is. Like, how is somebody going to climb that? How long is it going to take them to climb that? Are they going to be able to do it rapidly enough? And also the pain on the, like, if it is very tall and it's now that they're having it's impacting their breathing. Like, those are all real concerns, and adds to the scale, and might be, hey, maybe he has to go up there and rescue a princess, but he is winded, or gets winded very easily, so he gets up there and he's weakened, and he has to, like, go up multiple times and get used to it, constantly trying to challenge who or whatever it is to rescue the prince. You can do something like that, have that in there, because that would be part of it, and that determination can also help demonstrate the actual strength of whoever your hero is, so, yeah. There was something else in my mind while thinking about that, running through that scenario, making that scenario. It's gone. I don't think it was that significant anyway. But yeah, so scale matters. I'm always gonna say. Well, hey, remember, I'm very technical. I mean, it's like, yes, scale matters. I'm technical. It matters a lot to me. It might not to you. That's fine. See you next time.